live and
Yes.
recording. Awesome. Welcome everybody to this very special episode of the Access book Dragons in the month of December. This is our first call with the author of this very beautiful book, Right Recovery for You, Madeline Bradford herself. She's a facilitator who's been doing and working with this beautiful body of work for over 10 years now, contributing to and working with the tools of access. And it's such an honor to have you with us today, Madeline. Thank you so much for coming on. And we would like to actually, can you hear us? It seems like it's frozen.
Yeah, she's there.
Can you hear us,
You
Madeline?
froze a little bit, but I think it's back. Okay, we're good.
Internet's excited. Awesome. So can we have you tell us a little more about your journey, Madeline? What is it that really got you um, really look at this right recovery for you and the way it is really created today in the world?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very grateful to be here and happy to share my journey. So I was diagnosed as a depressed person and an alcoholic back in, I'm trying to think when that all happened. I think the 80s. Um, and I went through traditional treatment. I think you have that too, the 12 step. And I was on antidepressants for a while, and I was seeing a therapist and doing everything I was supposed to do according to this reality. Went to AA for years, did everything they told me to do there. But all the time I was going, there's got to be something different. This just is so, and I didn't know the terms light and heavy, but my sense is this is just so heavy. I'm not going to live my life as an alcoholic and a depressive. And, I was making tiny little steps along the way. And then in 2006, I discovered access consciousness. I wasn't looking for a different kind of therapy or anything like that. But by that time, I was in private practice as a psychotherapist. Once I'd gotten sober, I went on to get my master's degree and to start practicing as a psychotherapist with a specialty in addiction. Anyway, I started using the access consciousness tools with my clients in my private practice, and they were getting better than with regular mental health psychotherapy tools. And I was like, that's interesting. So I think it was 2007, 2008, I approached Gary Douglas and said, hey, can we do something with access consciousness and addiction? He's like, yes. And that's when Right Recovery for You was born. And it's been developing over the years, but what I discovered is everything I learned about addiction and what it is and what it isn't and what it means for people in this reality in AA and 12 steps and mental health work is pretty much inaccurate, a lie, a myth. You can completely recover. You don't have to label yourself as an addict or an alcoholic. You can completely recover from any addictive behavior, from any mental health issue. And this is the magic of access consciousness and using these tools in Right Recovery for You. So anyway, during all this time, Gary kept saying, you need to write the book, you need to write the book, you need to write the book. So eventually I wrote the book. And it's now in French, Italian, German, and something else, and I can't even think, but it's going to be Spanish. It's going on to be in other languages too. And it's what it really is one, it confronts the myths and lies about addiction, like once an addict, always an addict, and it only happens to these few people. And addiction is about alcohol and drugs, which it's not. I mean, it can be, but there's so much more to it. But it gives a lot of tools and information, practical things that people can do and use to begin to step out of these traps. And the only other thing I want to say, which is one of the really biggest things about the book, is some different ideas about addiction and recovery. Addiction is really where people leave themselves and go after a behavior or a substance because they don't know how to deal with what they're confronted with. They lack tools. They lack information. So when life seems too much, or they haven't gotten what they require from their family or their culture or their religions or whatever, it's really easy just to kind of go over here. It can be into alcohol and drugs, but it can be into perfectionism. Excuse me. It can be into being the perfect mom or making lots of money or being successful in business or trauma drama. Addiction is an energy. It's not the target. And that's how I work with people, bringing themselves back to themselves. Because recovery isn't just about, it's not about stopping something. It's about recovering the whole of you. And once you recover you and step into you, the addictive behavior basically just falls away. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, as they say in America.
I mean,
And I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify anything.
there's so many beautiful paths to this, Madeline. You already gave us like so many different paths to this. But if you could talk to us about how there is this, I mean, with all the years of work that you've done in this field, about how there is this almost negativity or the stigma that's associated with any form of addiction, right? How does one know that they are addicted in the first place? Because you said that addiction is just not with substances. And can you talk a little more about what is
Right.
addiction and like how does one know if they're addicted?
Great question. One of the things I talk about is use, abuse, and addiction, because any substance or any behavior can be use, abuse, or addiction. So I'll just go with alcohol and perfectionism. Let's do two at a time. So use is you're having a beer or you're having a glass of wine with your dinner. Perfectionism, oh, I'd really like to get this a little better because it's really fun when I do it well. That's use in perfectionism. That's use in alcohol. Abuse is you're aware that you start using the substance or the behavior in a way it's not supposed to be used. So, for example, use with alcohol would be more like, oh, I just had a horrible day, or I found out my kids are failing in school, or, I just want to blot out for a minute. I think I'll have, 4 beers, or just not deal with it right now. And in perfectionism, it would be more like, Sevi or Mary just made me feel so bad. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to show them I'm perfect. And that that's not really what's going on, that what you really need to do is to process, what does this mean that you felt hurt or that you got dissed by somebody, but you're like, I just can't deal with that right now. So I'm going to just show them that I'm perfect and show myself I'm okay. But you're aware of what you're doing in abuse. It's not the right action, but you're aware of what you're doing. In addiction, it's like a default. Something happens, your spouse wants a divorce, you lose a job, or even something more minor, like all of a sudden you realize that you lost a certain amount of money, not even a huge amount, and you just go to drinking. You just, okay, I've got to have a lot of beer. I've got to default. That's addiction. And perfectionism, it's like whatever happens, you put all of your energy into showing the world and showing yourself that you're perfect no matter what. You disregard your family, you disregard friends, you disregard your job. I'm doing it perfect. Can't you say I'm perfect? And if you have any sense that you're not perfect, it creates enormous amounts of anxiety. So you want to ask yourself, is there any behavior or substance that I use when I'm really anxious or don't know how to deal with things? Do I have a default leaving myself that I find myself in repeatedly, that if I don't go there, if I don't become the most perfect person, if I don't drink a lot, I have anxiety, or I have when do I get to go there? So it's kind of on a continuum, but it's good to look at whatever it is, whatever behavior you have that you use when you come up against something that you've decided you can't deal with. or that's just creating a little anxiety for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I don't think any one of us has ever heard this thing put together of addiction or alcoholism and perfection in the same spectrum. It's like two opposite ends of the same thing. And that is so amazing. Marilyn, could you talk about what other kind of, like, because in your book also, like you mentioned, like, what other kind of addiction is, and like how Dane with the earth, like when he's talking about it, he's like, it's not the pollution that is killing the earth, it's the judgment and the anger and the hatred that's killing the earth. And it's like, and and then the same thing is like, does addiction only just mean alcoholism, cigarettes, sex, or one of those things that have been listed out, or what other kind of addiction, like, um, is there?
Yes, great question. I mean, all kinds of things. Depression can be an addiction. Relationship can be an addiction. Obviously, food, gambling, helping others, fixing others, saving others, rescuing others is a huge addiction that a lot more women than men fall into that one. But being healthy can be an addiction. Now that sounds crazy, but oh no, I'm having this diet. I'm only having 6 pieces of okra a day, or it's just craziness where you're not actually being present. And that's the thing, you're in an addictive behavior when you're not being present. And when you're buying something as a solution and an answer. I'm going to run, 12 kilometers a day and I'm going to do this. And that can be an addictive behavior. So it's really where you're not present, you're leaving yourself, you're trying to find a way to fix some kind of anxiety. But I'm so glad you brought up the judgment thing, because one of the things I discovered after doing Right Recovery for You for a few years was that these things we're talking about, drugs, perfectionism, relationship, gambling, health, perfect body, all of those things are what I call the secondary addictions. There's actually a primary addiction, and that's to judgment and the wrongness of self. And if you kind of scratch any addictive behavior, you'll find that underneath it is this terrible sense of wrongness. Just because we're made so wrong often when we're a little different, when we don't fit in with our family. We as the Shazooms do this. This is how we behave. This is how girls behave. This is how boys behave. And you're like, but I'm not like that. This is how we behave, or religion or culture. So we start feeling wrong and trying to fit ourselves into what we're told we should be. And that creates a lot of distress. And nobody tells us, you know what? You're not wrong. You're you. You're amazing. I mean, how many people as children have their parents look at them and say, you are an amazing, unique, wonderful being. Tell me what's true for you. Let me know what works for you. I mean, I know like 2 people who got that. We all get this. You need to behave this way. You need to be this. You need to study this. You need to marry. You need to have this. And that creates such a sense of wrongness. So that's actually the primary addiction, judgment and the wrongness of self, that underlies any other of the secondary addictive behaviors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And thank you. It's so interesting that you're saying judgment is the underlying thing for addiction, and then it's the addicts who get judged even more.
Yes, exactly.
And it's a self-destructive loop that we put people in.
Yes. And often the addict gets judged, particularly if it's alcohol and drugs. They get judged as a scapegoat. They get judged because the rest of the family, the culture, the community, whatever, does not want to look at their part. They do not want to look at themselves. So the person who is into alcohol and drugs, and I'm not saying they didn't make the choice. However, a lot of the judgment is about the other people not being willing to look at themselves. I don't have any problems. I'm perfect. I did it right. You're the problem. So unfortunately, that's what happens.
Awesome. May I also ask you about, like, I love how we are talking about recovery. So, can you talk about what is true recovery and like what is recovery?
Yes.
Yeah.
To me, recovery is the recovering of the being that's been sliced off, put aside, put behind you. It's not stopping something. Now, sometimes you do need to stop things. For instance, I always tell people who are doing illegal drugs, get a different addiction for the time being. Come on, people. You can get in a whole lot of legal financial trouble. It's not a good choice. Go to food, go to alcohol, just stay home, don't drive. But basically, we're doing this addictive behavior because we don't have ourselves. We're not being us. So I work to educate people, to help them let go of the limitations that they've bought as real and true, like you should be doing this and you're not enough here and you're wrong here. And it's about recovering the being, recovering the unique being. Each one of us is a gift. Each one of us is a different possibility. But in order to control us, we're made to line up, be this way, look this way, do this thing, which has nothing to do with who we actually are. And you cannot be the gift to the world and the universe that you are if you're contracting yourself, diminishing yourself, taking off parts and pieces of yourself in order to fit into who and what you told you are. So true recovery is recovering you. And that even can include, gosh, I'm not even sure I know who I am. Well, let's start investigating. Let's find out who that unique being is. Let's find out who that gift is. And that to me is what recovery is really about.
Wow. The book, it starts with explaining the paradigm that we're expected to fit into. And somehow
Yes.
it's like addiction is a coping mechanism where you try to fit in and you sort of numb the pain of not being able to fit in with the addiction. And somehow there's this beautiful space that you just spoke about just now with, you know, finding the places where you've sort of left yourself behind and
Yes.
staying present with it. So
That's a
you,
perfect summary. Thank you. You really got it.
so if you could maybe speak to some of the tools that you allude to and speak in detail in the book with regards to, staying present, acknowledging the lies that you bought into, or things like that could be a
Yes, the first tool is say to yourself 20 or 30 times a day, I'm not wrong. What if you're not wrong for anything you're choosing? If it is, just as you said, a coping skill because you didn't have any other tools. So any way that you can just let go of the sense of wrongness and go into allowance for yourself and knowing that you chose this because you didn't have any other tools. That's a really good one to start with. Some other tools. I always ask clients, what's right about your addiction you're not getting? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm drinking 2 gallons of wine a week or whatever it is, I say, okay, so, excuse me, I have morning throat.
It's so funny.
And I don't even smoke.
They're expecting you to judge them, and it's like, how come you're not judging me for the way everyone else is? And here comes an access therapist who's like, well, what's right about this you're not getting? That is so cool.
What's right about this you're not getting, and what does it do for you? So, I've asked people and they say things like, well, it just helps me cope with the fact that my marriage is falling apart and I don't know how to deal with that. It helps me stay in school and study something I don't want to study. And, it helps me with the fact that I think I'm going to get fired at work and I don't know how to manage the anxiety. And what I say to people is, with all that in place, without any other tools, how could you stop? let's look at what some other tools are to help you deal with your marriage, to help you deal with your job and your boss, to help you deal with these other things. And as we get those things in place and bringing you back to you, once again, let's let go of all the judgments of what you're not and look at what's right about you and what you would like to create. And I always ask people, make a list of what you would like your life to be like. And that can help you to begin to identify where you're cutting off parts and pieces of yourself. And write down the things that you're unsure how to deal with. Find some help here. And there are more tools in the book to help you deal with those things so that you're not at a loss and you don't have just one place you default into, whether it's gambling or carousing or whatever it is. Let's bring you back to you and let's help you find out who you are. So those are some of the things. Another great question is, who does this belong to? Because addiction is an energy. And my mother was addicted to criticism and negativity, and my father was addicted to workaholism, basically. So I got the energy of addiction. I turned it into, quote, alcoholism, which I don't believe is actually real. But who does it belong to? It was a learned behavior from my family. And once you can really get that you just picked up this energy of addiction from your family, from your culture, from whomever. Religion can be an addiction. I'm not saying it always is, but it definitely can be. Then you can go, oh, I just picked up this behavior, like the same way I eat or whatever, shop or whatever it is. Shopping is a good addiction. Well, I can change that. And that's where it comes into, you can change these behaviors. If you get a couple things from this, please know, number one, you're not wrong. It's a coping skill. And number two, you can change any of these behaviors. And
I need
start the journey.
Yeah, I
Being the
need to make
gift.
a little confession. I haven't read the book, but then today this conversation really is. Thank you so much for this space, and thank you so much for. It's so much beyond what I really thought what this could be, and I'm really, really, really looking forward to go. I feel like it's going to be one of the most relevant books in my life at the moment. So thank you so much for this. And
So
for everything
glad.
that you have created. Marilyn, can you talk to us about the Right Recovery for You class? Is there a class? Are there programs that one could do? And can you say a little more about that, please?
Yes, I do big class travel. Now I do them over 5 days for essentially 3 hours a day. There's one coming up in January, I think the 6th. Unfortunately, it's not a great time zone for y'all, but these classes can also be purchased. And I also do short, like I'm doing a one-off series on specialty classes that Right Recovery for You facilitators, which is in January, will be able to teach, and things like making yourself a priority. And the one coming up tomorrow is about food. We've done one on judgment. We've done one on bodies. We'll do one on relationships. So I do both one-off things, and I do these 2.5 days, which are now 5 days of 3 hours a day, which is pretty intense, actually. And I also do private sessions. You can find all of this on my website, marilynbradford.com. It is more complete. The Access website, where you find me as a facilitator, has the main things listed, but it doesn't always have the smaller classes listed. So if anybody doesn't mind getting up at odd hours, I understand that's not easy.
Yeah, in India, I think we're used to attending, and I think I love that, because the time zones kind of don't stop us. If we want to go attend a class, we'll do
Like
it.
how photos.
Yeah, exactly. And and really thank you for creating this,
Yeah.
different possibilities.
We'd love to get this out, Marilyn, some more. If you could share, we'll definitely post the link here. And then if there's anyone who's watching this, who's interested in knowing more about Marilyn and what she does in her classes, please reach out to her. And then I'm so glad. I'm personally so glad that we had this conversation, and I'm going to go read the book now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, thank you very much.
Is there a prerequisite for your class, Marilyn? Or can
Pardon?
anyone join? Is there a
Is there a
prerequisite?
prerequisite for the
Oh, no, there are no prerequisites for the class. And it's been interesting since I've been doing these. I did once one in Vancouver, Canada, a couple of years ago, where there was a couple of people who hadn't even had their bars run and people who'd been in Access for 7 to 10 years. So I do a lot of like activities and things so that everybody can participate. It's not a lot of, you need to have this done. I do encourage people to get their bars run, but no, there are no prerequisites for the classes. Everybody is welcome.
It's so great because I know there are a lot of people who know
Yeah.
people, who are probably
Yes.
looking for something like this. And what an invitation.
what a beautiful gift.
Well, I'd love for this to spread all over. Thank you so much. Absolutely.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much, Shivam. Thank you, Anurada. And thank you so much once again, Madeline. And we hope to see you soon on another thing in a
Thank
class.
you so much.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank